Welcome to Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning for Wednesday, August 27th. I'm your host, Tom Orr. The Texas game in 3 days. The game against Michigan in 94 days. If you're planning your next event, make it unforgettable with Grateful Griddle, Columbus's favorite food truck, serving up smash burgers, gourmet sandwiches, and good vibes. Book your catering today at gratefulgriddleoh.com. On today's show, you're going to get to hear everything Texas head coach Steve Sarkisian had to say about the Buckeyes and this weekend's monumental matchup in the horseshoe, number 1 versus number 2. Can't get much bigger than that. So going to start with just Sark's overall sort of general thoughts on the game. This one goes on for a little while. Most of the rest of them will be sort of shorter answers in this.
As far as the ball game goes, pretty epic matchup when you think about, 1 versus 2 in at least one of the two major polls for the first game of the season is great for college football, in my opinion. As much as, I'm going to talk about the rankings don't matter, which I believe that, but I do think for college football, the fanfare, the excitement around this game, I think is great for our sport. And the fact that we have 3 top 10 matchups this weekend, I think is great for college football in general. But beyond the rankings, these are 2 really good teams. Ton of respect for Ohio State, ton of respect for Ryan Day and the job he's done. Obviously defending national champs. I think Coach Day is like 70-10 since he's taken over at Ohio State. And you think about the quality of players in this game. If you look at last year's game, 26 players got drafted off of the 2 teams in the NFL. You include free agents, 32 players that were playing in that game a year ago are now in the NFL. And the fact that both teams are coming back is 1 and 2 in the country, I think speaks volumes to the quality of programs that both of us have, quite frankly. And so, we've got 9 guys that started in that game a year ago. We had 30 players back that played in that game a year ago, so we do have some experience from that environment. But it should be a heck of a day. The fact that, this is going to be Lee Corso's swan song, and ESPN College Game Day is going to be there. Obviously, Fox with their big noon kickoff covering the game is going to be there. I think sets for a great environment and a great stage for this game. Naturally, it's a tall task. We've talked about this at length before the season, but we've got a tough road slate this year, and this is the first one of a few to come. And so it serves us good to have to go on the road early. Find out about ourselves, find out where we're at as a program, where we can improve, and where we can continue to get better, because we're going to travel more than any other SEC team this year in our conference. And so this is a great opportunity for us to go do that. Naturally, we believe in our process on the road. We've won 11 in a row on the road now, and they haven't been easy. They've all been very difficult. Going on the road is tough, but this is going to be a heck of a matchup for a great environment against a really good team who's really well coached, who's had a ton of success. And I think a little bit too about some of the epic games that Texas and Ohio State have been part of. Obviously last year's national semifinal game. This is the 20-year anniversary of the 05 season and VY and going there and getting a win at the shoe. So the 2 programs are not they're very kind of aware of one another. There's been great games, and the goal is, I think, for both teams and for both fan bases, that this game can live up to some of those expectations of the games in the past. So with that, we'll open it up.
This next one is one of those questions that you hear the question and you assume, okay, I know exactly what he's going to say. And he did not give the answer that I was assuming he was going to say. Normally, when you get asked, would you prefer to have this game a week or 2 later on the schedule if it was up to you? You'll get the coach saying, well, it's not up to me. I don't want to get into hypotheticals. Nope, that wasn't Sark's answer. Here was his actual answer on whether he would prefer to have this game maybe a week or 2 later on the schedule.
We would always, I guess, want it to be, you'd like to get something, some footing underneath you with some new players, some guys that maybe haven't played with you, even if they're transfers. But I think at the end of the day, it's like if it's both of ours first game, you feel okay. Where I'd be really uncomfortable if this was our first game and they had already gotten a game under their belt. So it just is what it is. You try to prepare your team as best you can. You try to minimize the self-inflicted wounds, and so that you can play as clean a football as possible come Saturday at noon.
Every coach has their own little pet sayings that you'll hear over and over again. One of Sark's is, you get what you emphasize. So, okay, what is Sark emphasizing with his team this week?
Well, I think details. We obviously started preparation a week ago, and we kind of, incrementally got through that preparation. I think this week is about the details and the style of play that we think is unique to us. Naturally, we want to remain enamored with what we do and not get caught up in the environment of, the crowd, the opponent, the kickoff time, whatever that is, and just focus on what we need to do so we can be the best of our ability. And that starts with the details. The little things are going to matter in this game.
Here's an impressive stat. The Texas Longhorns have not lost a true road game since October of 2022. So, okay, that's pretty impressive. What's the key to their success on the road?
I think we trust our process. We've got a real process that we believe in our starting this morning, and what our practice plans look like and the crowd noise that we work with, and then to Friday's routine, to game day's routine, and to really toning out what's going on outside of us and focus on what's going on between the white lines. And to your point, we've been in some tough venues. Playing at Kyle Field last year was a tough venue. Playing at Michigan last season, defending national champs. Going to Alabama the year before that. So we've been in some tough venues. I think doing it with confidence, knowing that adversity will strike, and then having a next play mentality, having the mental toughness to persevere to get on the other side of some of that adversity, I think is really important as well. But mostly it's staying connected. It's staying connected on that sidelines, being enamored with what we need to do, and not get so caught up in what's going on around us.
This weekend's matchup is going to be a showdown of two former five-star quarterbacks, Julian Sayin making his first start, Arch Manning, not his first start, but his first start against a really good opponent on the road. So, all right, what's the message to Arch this week when he's headed on the road to Ohio Stadium?
It's go be him. That's really our messaging to all of our players, though. You don't have to do anything you've never done before. You don't have to, we're not asking any superhuman efforts of you to do anything that is extraordinary. Just go be you. What you've done is good enough to get us to this point, and to get him to this point in this juncture of his career. Now go play the way he's capable of playing, to the style that he's comfortable doing it. And so, I'm not a big, the best way I speak to our players is me remaining consistent with who I am. And I think, one of the mistakes sometimes coaches can make is having more talks, more conversations, more one-on-one meetings than you would normally have. Well, now I'm out of character for me, which then in turn can get them out of character. So we'll stick to the routine and the plan of when I meet with the quarterback individually, and try to put ourselves in position to go play well.
Ohio State has only played one game since the last time they played the Texas Longhorns. The last time Texas was on the field, that was in the Cotton Bowl and that 28-14 loss to Ohio State. So what is the balance between using that Cotton Bowl loss as motivation for Texas this offseason versus, at some point you kind of want to move on with life? So how have they sort of struck that balance between motivating and using that game and not getting overwhelmed with that game?
That was last year's team, different people, different personnel. You use it when you need it. I didn't major in it, but I used it when I needed it. When I felt like, man, we're getting a little complacent, training camp's getting a little mundane. You kind of, I always had that in my back pocket, but it's a different team, different leaders. They've got a different team. Everybody's, it's very different. At the end of the day, that stung walking out of the Cotton Bowl, last year. But at the end of the day, this is a new challenge, new journey, new mission that we're on. And so that's kind of been our focus.
He was asked about some of the differences in the rosters between these two teams. You've heard him talk about that a little bit already, how much turnover there has been and how many guys went to the NFL, but also some of his specific thoughts on Ohio State quarterback Julian Sayin.
Yeah, I think, we both lost some really good veteran players off of last year's teams. I think about a couple of guys in our secondary, Makuba and Jade at the front, Alford and Vernon, obviously Matt Golden, some really good players, some guys on our O-line, Kelvin. They lost some good players too, and the two backs were great players, the receiver. Julian's a really good player. He's a natural passer. He's got a quick release. He's a better athlete than you think. He can run. So we definitely need to be alert to that and ready for that. But, at the end of the day, this is going to be one of those, when you go into the ring with somebody, what's the plan? And then you get, as the rounds go on, you have to be able to adjust. And we'll have a plan, they'll have a plan. But I think we're going to have to be ready to adjust to maybe some of the new things. They've got a new defensive coordinator. They've got a new offensive coordinator. Coach Day obviously is going to have his fingerprints all over the offense. He kind of hired, in my opinion, a head coach for the defense in Matt Patricia. Here's a guy who's been an NFL head coach, been with Bill Belichick, and the idea that he can really be a head coach on the defensive side of the ball, where Coach Day can really focus on the offense. I think it was a great addition for them. But ultimately, there's so much new as much as what was old. I think we got to focus on what we need to do and then be adjustable as the game goes on.
Sark has been a part of programs that have won it all before. You may remember he spent a little time in Tuscaloosa, Alabama a little while ago. But how do you know if a team has what it takes to do what those Alabama teams and some other teams he's been affiliated with have done?
I don't know. That's the thing. We're a long ways away from January 19th. I'm focused on August 30th. I'm focused on the next 5 days. I'm focused on what do we need to do. I think that's one of the traps that we can fall into as a team is looking to the summit and not focusing on, the first journey of this hike that we're on, this climb that we're on. And so, I challenged the players on that this morning. Today's the most important day. Saturday is going to be here soon enough. This weekend is the most important game. Down the road is down the road. So I tend not to get caught daydreaming, and I try to focus on the task at hand of what's right in front of us.
One of the standard things when you go on the road especially to a hostile environment like Ohio Stadium will likely be on Saturday, during the week at practice, you pipe in some crowd noise. So, all right, how are the Longhorns dealing with that so far?
They do well. I think one thing that crowd noise does is once you get over being overwhelmed by the noise, it forces the focus. It forces you to focus, and inevitably the way we operate, when you're really focused, it better serves us. And so sometimes I'm wondering if we should be pumping crowd noise at home too. I feel like we have more penalties on pre-snap stuff at home than we do on the road. And so, but there's a reason for that. I think is we practice it, and our guys feel comfortable with the crowd noise.
The Buckeyes had a lot of turnover on the field in terms of players headed off to the NFL, but they also had turnover at both coordinator spots. Brian Hartline and Matt Patricia will both be calling plays for the first time as Ohio State assistant coaches. So when you're Sark and you're Texas, how different is it to prepare for new players, which you're going to get, but also potentially preparing for new schemes with those new coordinators?
Well, the scheme portion of it is, what are you calling it? How are you designing it? What are you blocking it versus the personnel? The player is, how's that person going to make it more difficult or maybe less difficult for you, depending on the strengths and weaknesses of the player. My humble opinion is they're not going to change. Why would you change? They had the number one defense, in the conference. They had a great run in the playoffs. They had a really good offense last year. Coach Day's fingerprints are all over that. They kept the entire defensive staff outside of the defensive play caller. So, it's kind of like, they're gonna evolve just like we evolve every year. But I think the premise of who they are in all three phases is going to remain really consistent.
The first game of the college football season is always a little bit nerve-wracking for coaches and players and fans and alike. But what makes Sark feel that he's, feel comfortable with the fact that his new starting quarterback, Arch Manning, is ready for this kind of a challenge and this kind of an environment?
He's just prepared well. He's practiced well, and he's had to go against our defense every day. He's been in these environments. It's not like we didn't put him in the game in the semifinal game last year. We put him in the game at Texas A&M. He's had to go in. Now he just gets to play more snaps, which I know he's excited about.
These two teams, as I mentioned earlier, have played each other pretty darn recently. So what did Sark learn by playing Ohio State last season that he can maybe use to carry over to this game?
They're really good. Ryan's done a great job recruiting, and they're very well coached. They're not a gimmick team at all. And I say that loosely, like I don't mean to offend anybody, but the things that they do are sound. And so you have to beat them. And inevitably, when two really good teams meet each other, that's where you're trying to minimize those mistakes. because good teams capitalize on those mistakes. And so we've got to be very detail-oriented, minimize the self-inflicted wounds, which I think we hurt ourselves with last year. Got to take care of the ball. I feel like the turnovers hurt us last year. And then to everyone's point, you got to score when you have opportunities to score against good teams.
No matter how touted a true freshman is, unless he's Jeremiah Smith, there's a little bit of a learning curve and a little bit of a growing up process that happens when you get on campus. So what has been the growth process been for Arch Manning to get to the point where he is now about ready to make a start on the road at Ohio State?
Arch is a great kid, man. He's an awesome young man. He's bought into every aspect of our program. He's been a great teammate. He's worked extremely hard. I think he's enjoyed college, and he should. But at the end of the day, I just feel like he's normal. And that's what I love about him. It's not some guy who feels like he's untouchable, he's better than everybody else. He doesn't do life like that, never mind football like that. And to me, that probably the best part of his evolution is that he hasn't changed on that aspect of who he is. Like, he stayed true to who he is, the way he was raised. And I think that that's really garnered a lot of respect from his teammates and the coaches by the way he conducts himself on a daily basis and the way he represents all of us. Because, as much as I get up here and talk to y'all, you can't go with a day without seeing somebody talking about Arch Manning. And so he's a direct representation of our football program and this university. And the way that he conducts himself is one that I think, we're all proud of, and one that we respect him for the way that he does it.
What's it like going on the road as a head coach like Sark? What are these road environments, whether it's playing at Alabama or playing at Texas A&M or playing at Michigan last year or Ohio State? What are those road environments like for him? Does he enjoy that?
I love them. I've never been to the Shoe. I'd never been to Michigan last year. I'd been to Kyle Field one time a year before that. And obviously I'd spent time in Tuscaloosa, but I love it. I think it's cool for college football. I kind of enjoy people telling me how terrible I am and stuff. It kind of fuels my fire a little bit. So but it should be a great environment. I'm looking forward to it.
This game is going to be an opportunity for one of these teams to get a real signature win right off the bat of the 2025 college football season. So what does an opportunity like this mean to Sark and his team? And then you're going to also hear him, he sort of obliquely references the recent move from the SEC to go from 8 to 9 conference games in 2026.
Yeah, no, I think it serves us well in preparation, as I said, for the remainder of the season, what we have to do. And you look at some of these other road games that we have to go on. I really think going to Michigan early in the year helped us and gave us a lot of confidence going to Kyle Field at the end of the year, because our players got exposed to so much of what it was like to be on the road in a hostile environment. So, the goal is that this can serve well for that as well as the speed of the game, the physicality of the game. You're looking at two, highly talented rosters with really good coaches. And so the speed, the physicality of which it'll be played at is going to be something that is going to be, really replicated when we get into SEC play. How it affects the 9 game, I don't know yet. I've spent about 20 seconds thinking about that when that announcement came out. So I don't know if it affects that so much moving forward, but I know it'll affect us this year, which I think in a good way.
One of the great truisms of college football is that defense travels. So, all right, Texas has a pretty good defense this year. How much confidence do they have in the defense that they're bringing? You're going to hear him say PK. He's talking about Pete Kwiatkowski, who is the defensive coordinator for the Longhorns.
Well, it's helpful, and I've said before throughout training camp, we've got a lot of talented players on the defensive side of the ball. We've got a lot of continuity on the defensive staff. PK, obviously, year 5, all the players here know him, know how he likes to call it. We've evolved over the years. But the fact that we can go play quality defense on the road against a high-quality opponent is going to be critical because I don't know how the game's going to go. I'd love to start really fast on offense and be clicking on all cylinders. We may not. And so if that's the case, you need your defense. We may be clicking on all cylinders on offense, and then you might have some turnovers. That happens. Then the defense has got to respond. And so to have veterans on the defensive side of the ball that are quality players with that coaching staff, I think is important in a game like this on the road to start the season.
And finally, I thought this was a good answer, good question as well. Just Sark's overall thoughts of games like this in just the big picture for college football under the guise of the changing college football playoff structure. What does it mean? What do games like this mean for college football with the college football playoff sort of going through another metamorphosis?
I think about the CFP, and as we've continued to evolve from 2 teams to 4 teams to 12 teams, and God knows where we're going to go next. My thought is almost that you get rewarded for playing these games, because I think you probably ask the majority of the coaches around the country, they're thinking, man, that's a really hard thing to do, is play that game week 1 on the road or at home, depending on the year. And so I think from a CFP standpoint, it's almost like, check mark the box for a positive that they were willing to play the game. Maybe they won it, maybe they didn't, but surely they put themselves out there and were willing to do it, and I see so many people talk about like SEC scheduling and, not playing Power 4 teams. In this conference, it's real. Like, we're playing real teams. We all are, and on top of our own schedule, and on top of next year, we're going to 9 games. And so you're looking at a real schedule. And so the goal is to be rewarded for playing in these games. Obviously, you can reward yourself by winning. That's helpful. But I just don't think either us or Ohio State, for that matter, is going to get punished for playing in this game from a CFP standpoint.
Hope you guys enjoyed that. These shows are generally pretty popular. Everyone likes to hear what the other coach is saying. We'll try and do one with Ryan Day, all the stuff that Ryan Day said about Texas. Going to be talking to him on Tuesday at Ohio State, and going to let you get one of those shows a little later on in the week with all the stuff that Ryan Day said about Texas. But for now, make sure you guys are joining us at BuckeyeHuddle.com. We've got our whole team working overtime this week, counting down to kickoff. Buckeyes and Longhorns at noon on Saturday. We will be there. Full pregame coverage, full postgame coverage, all the coverage you've come to know and expect from us at BuckeyeHuddle.com and YouTube.com/BuckeyeHuddle. That'll do it for today. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We will talk to you tomorrow.